So welcome to Module 7, which we've entitled Entity Functions. So this is the first time that we're going to be using two elements that we've already met in the course today, which is entities and functions. This is just the beginning of your journey. So later on in this course, we'll be looking in much more detail at various categories of function, both for or not for entities. But it's very important that early on you understand that the concept of functions extends and overlaps with the concepts of entities and makes your project even more powerful. So, earlier today we found out about functions, a long list of ways to accelerate getting to a result, finding a calculation, calculating the age of someone by looking at the difference in years, finding out today's date simply by typing the current date. There are thousands of functions. Some of them are, shall we call them, uniform. Whether you have entities or not, they do exactly the same thing. The current date, for example, doesn't care whether you have entities or not. But some of them are designed to work only with entities, because they do things that only make sense in the context of an entity. Let's take a look at two examples. Both of these have been taken from the function reference, and I'm using them just as examples. There are dozens more that I could have used, but very quickly you can see, I hope, why they only really apply to entities. The first function we're going to look at is called for all. It's a common requirement. Let's say that each pilot takes a number of exams in order to prove that they have met a certain set of standards. Well, you might have a business rule that says, well, we'll only take a pilot on board if they've passed all of their exams. Clearly, we don't know in advance maybe how many exams they've taken. So we need to have a function that can work on 1 exam, 2 exams, 5 exams, 10 exams, and be able to tell us whether a condition or several conditions have been met for all of them. Hence the name, for all. If we take a brief look at my screenshots here, there's actually, and this is the interesting part, is there's two identical pieces of text. I'm weighing my words. If I go down here, you'll see that it says for all, followed by brackets. And down here it says for all of. We spoke about this earlier, is many functions in Intelligent Advisor, they have short forms and long forms. These two screenshots do exactly the same thing. They are functionally and technically identical. Intelligent Advisor doesn't mind which you use. You can mix and match. You could do one like this on one page and do a similar one in the short version on another page. It doesn't matter. You pick it based on your own writing style, but also based on your audience. Who's going to be reading this? I want you to notice also that I've used a comma in both of these examples. You'll remember way back in Module 1 we talked about the concept of a region and how numbers and dates get displayed in different ways if you're in a different region. The comma is also a region-sensitive item. For example, if I was writing this in German, I would be using a semicolon in place of the comma. This is documented at the top of your function guide, of your function reference, I'm sorry. So pay close attention to whatever the regional separator is. For all is a good starting point. Exists is almost the counterpoint to for all. Let's say you have a business rule that says, well, if a candidate has at least one exam where they scored 100%, then we would consider them to be star candidates. They're potentially really super hot pilots. So exists is, do we have at least one instance that meets my conditions? So if I say the condition is you score 100% in the exam, do I have at least one exam where that condition is true? Take a look at the screenshot underneath, and you'll see that my example for exists is a little bit different. So in this case, exists requires me to think a little more carefully about how I'm going to express this condition. The candidate scored 100% at least once if, for at least one of the candidate's exams, so the for at least one of, that's the difference with for all, which said for all of, the candidate's exam result is 100. The candidate's exam result is 100. You probably recognized that's a yes-no. That's a Boolean attribute. And chances are, before I started writing this function, I didn't have that attribute. So underneath, you'll see I've added the candidate's exam result is 100 if the candidate's exam result equals 100. And you're thinking, that sounds a bit cyclical logic. The reason for doing this is twofold. One, many functions, such as exists, require the condition, so this part here, to be expressed as a Boolean, to be expressed as a yes-no. So even though to me and you it's very simple, is if the score is 100, you got 100, I've transformed the number 100 into a Boolean. The second reason for doing this is actually it makes debugging so much easier. Instead of hunting through the debugger, looking for the place that I might have scored 97%, by adding an extra attribute that says yes, no, whether I've scored 100%, it makes for a very easy marker to help me find whether my rule is working, as we'll see in the demo shortly. So what are we going to put in the demo? We're actually going to put several things. We're going to put in how to use an entity function. We're going to talk about parsing issues because I've added a lot of attributes and it's a good opportunity to highlight some things that may go wrong. And we'll look at potential errors in relation to entity functions. And then we'll round off the session by implementing what we just talked about, adding a Boolean attribute to help find out, to help the exist function. So I'm going to come out of there. And we'll go back into the editor. So over here, I'm going to show you two interesting techniques. Over here, you can see I've already written the rules that I'm about to show you. One thing you can't do in Intelligent Advisor, and it makes perfect sense, is give the same rule twice. Oracle Intelligent Advisor will simply tell you, you've told me twice, and that doesn't make any sense. So let's imagine that I've been working on all of this, and I want to temporarily at least make it disappear because I'm not sure that it works properly, or because I want to try something different. I'm going to click Toggle Comment. When I toggle comment, this whole section now that I had highlighted has become invisible temporarily to Oracle Intelligent Advisor. When I validate, it's basically as if that text was never written. I know what you're thinking, I could have just deleted it, but the bonus with the toggle comment is I can come back and I can put it all back the way it was before. I don't have to reformat everything. So the bonus of toggle comment is it remembers the format. So I'll toggle the comment and I'll validate it. So this no longer exists. And just to play the game right to the very end, I'll open up a brand new document and pretend that this is a brand new piece of Word, and we're going to implement a rule. The rule we're going to implement is the second of the two. We're going to say, well, if you get at least 100% at least once, we consider you a star pupil. So we're going to do something like this. The candidate is a star candidate if. So far, so good. I've chosen this time round not to format it as I go along. I'm going to now go and format the conclusion and format level 1, because now I want to go to the rule assistant. And I'm going to type in for at least one of relationship, comma, attribute. In this case, I want to use the third variety because I want to use an attribute to explain under which condition I consider that you are a star. So I'm going to select this. I have two relationships. Am I talking about the candidates or am I talking about the exams? I'm talking about the exams. So I'll double click and then I'm going to go and put myself in the attribute. Which attribute is it? Now I have a problem because the attribute I want doesn't actually exist yet. So the list of choices is not actually useful. I'll say the candidates, exam was 100 mark. You'll notice in this case I used was rather than is because I considered that the exams have already happened. So although I have a tendency, and it's good practice to generally write things in the present, sometimes you're talking about things that definitely have already happened, so I'm going to use was in this case. So for at least one of the candidates' exams, the candidate's exam was 100 mark. But this, we have yet to explain what that actually means. It's clear to you and me, but it's not clear to Oracle Intelligent Advisor. So I'm going to come down to the next level, put a bit of space in between me and the previous one, and say the candidate's exam was a 100 mark if the candidates, and I'm going to use the rule assistant as well because you can see I'm making lots of spelling mistakes. The candidates exam result equals 100. So the candidate's exam result, which is a number, if the number is equal to 100, my yes, no becomes a yes. If the number isn't 100, it's a no. Yes, no. So it's a very common technique you'll find in Intelligent Advisor is building in an extra attribute just because it's easier to debug, to be able to see the yes, no, instead of hunting for the number, but also because certain functions, like exists, require me to use a Boolean. So I'm going to validate that. Cool, everything happened perfectly well. You might be tempted to do this. You say, well, Richard, can I just make a shortcut and say, look, you know, forget this whole business of the Boolean stuff. I'm just going to put that straight in there. I don't need this now because, hey, look, it's really obvious. I've kind of concatenated the two together. And look, when I go view, no error is found, Richard. So, you know, what are you talking about? But you'll see that a warning, or rather an error, has appeared to say, well, look, sorry, but the second argument in your exists needs to be a Boolean. And it says this is a problem. So this is a good example of what happens when you try to take a shortcut and build in too much squeeze logic into that line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that. I'm going to delete that copy that I was just playing with right now. And I'm going to go back to my comments originally, and we'll uncomment the attributes that I showed, the rules that I showed you before. And you'll see that in here, I have both of them implemented. I have passed all examinations, and I have a Boolean to describe when an exam is a pass. Basically, if your result is greater than the passing score, you passed. And then you get 100%. We consider it, yeah, your candidate scored 100% if you have a result that's 100%. I'll revalidate this and close my file. The other thing that I said I was going to show you was I was going to talk about attribute parsing. This is something that will creep up on you at some point, so it's good to get it out of the way now. I'm going to select the candidate's exam, and I'm going to take a look at, for example, the candidate's exam result is a pass. And you'll see that it says the candidate's exam result is a pass, the candidate's exam result is not a pass. It seems to have correctly understood how my English was written, but what you might find is occasionally that it misinterprets, because this particular phrase could have been interpreted two ways, because result is also a verb. So it might have been that it actually understood that result was the verb, at which point you end up seeing things like the candidate's exam do not result as a pass. So take time to check the parsing that's been done. And if you observe that it's wrong, check in here to see if it's offering you alternatives. In this case it is, because it thinks there are two verbs. Select the other one. We'll talk about custom booleans a little bit later on, but you can just paraphrase it and say, if neither of those options work, there are several other things we might need to do to have the correct text in front of us. And you're thinking, well, why is that important? Because think of your consumers. Think of the people who are going to go on your website and see if they can pilot your plane. If you're throwing text at them that is either illogical, unreadable, or just doesn't make any sense, you're not going to have the desired effect. Off to the debugger, and incidentally the debugger is another great place to look out for parsing issues. Switch to data. The name of the airline is unknown. Silver Airways. Select the candidates, and we'll add a candidate. And you'll notice now that I can add the exams. Let's add an exam. Let's say that this particular candidate has taken 2 exams. The candidate's name is Anna, and Anna has taken 2 exams. Let's say the first one is P101, flight school, and let's say that she scored 97, and let's say that the passing score was 85. So we can see that Anna's result is definitely a pass, but she didn't score 100%. Because she scored 97. It's pretty close, but not 100. Let's give her a second exam, P102 Advanced Reversing. I figure that's probably quite important if you're a pilot. She scored 100, and the passing score was only 75. So you can see that she has passed, and she has 100%. And the yes-no flag has shown up to say she has 100%. Remember that at any time you could select one of these and you could ask, why is this true? It's true because she has 100%. Let's go back to Anna, and you'll see that if we go back to Anna, Anna passed all examinations. Anna scored 100% at least once. This is really a game changer, because now we can identify for each of our candidates whether they were successful in everything or whether they scored 100% on one. And I can say, Anna passed all the examinations. Show decision. Yeah, because she has 2 passes. If I add a second candidate, I won't go through the whole detail, but I'll add a second one. We'll call the second one Richard. And let's say that Richard took 1 exam. Yeah, and up. We'll call this P103, typing in the air. It's very important to know how to type when you're on the plane. He got 54% and the passing score was 75. So he's not a pass and he didn't get 100%. So now when I look at not a pass and show decision, it says, well, for P103 typing in the air, you didn't get a pass because the result is 54 and the score is 75. If I go to Anna, who had 2 exams, and look at the same thing, you'll notice a really, you'll notice a really interesting thing. If I now show decision, P101 flight school, if I wanted to look at any of the other exams for either Richard or Anna, they're all available here. So the debugger has adapted to the fact that now I've got lots of exams across different people. And if I go and look at Anna's details and I say, show me about, has Anna passed all the examinations, you'll notice it now says Anna and Richard. So it adapts to wherever I'm searching for answers, so I can easily flick between the two, because sometimes when you're debugging, you need to compare behavior between instances. So that concludes our little demo about entities and entity functions.